Javier Milei, rock star, chainsaw aficionado, radical libertarian, and president of Argentina. Against all odds, he and his party, La Libertad Avanza, have had an incredibly successful midterm election. While Milei is not up for re-election yet, this midterm cycle was a referendum on his ideas, governance, and shock therapy plan for Argentina. Milei is one of the world's first self-proclaimed libertarian heads of state. Here is a man who quotes Hayek and Mises and has named his dogs after economists Murray Rothbard, Milton Friedman, and Robert Lucas. Through Milei, the world is testing a bold libertarian governance experiment for the very first time, but it hasn't been easy. Argentina was on the verge of hyperinflation and total economic breakdown from years of mismanagement, corruption, and bloated bureaucracy. But Milei entered office like an explosives team racing a ticking time bomb. In 2 years, we've seen dramatic cuts in the bureaucracy, spending, and regulations. Price controls and currency manipulations are being stripped away. The shackles are coming off of Argentina's economy. And Milei did this without legislative majority. This is why this election was so important. Milei's party, only 4 years old, faced deep uncertainty, growing international concern, and shaky confidence from investors. But in spite of it all, the forces of heaven smiled fondly upon these underdogs and gave them another victory few saw coming. It was a national question. Do you really want this? And Argentines said yes. If Argentines were dating libertarianism, they just agreed to marry it. In this video, we will talk all about the election, Milei's first 2 years, and speculate on what might come next. Hey everyone, and welcome to Undoctrination. I'm Maggie, and I talk about global political movements on this channel, but Argentina has a special place in my heart. Today, I brought on expert Marcos Falcone to answer some of my burning questions about Milei's Argentina. But first, why are Argentines taking a chance on libertarian governance? In the early 1900s, Argentina was one of the wealthiest countries in the world. In the 1940s, Juan Perón, alongside his famously charismatic wife Eva, became an architect of Argentina's decline despite his popularity and enduring legacy. I asked Marcos about this.
By the time Perón rose to power, Argentina was among the richest countries in the world. And this meant that there was a lot to steal or distribute, if we want to use euphemisms, right? And that's exactly what Perón did. He became really popular with large segments of the population who remember very well what they received under Perón, but they don't remember what came after, or they say that other governments were responsible just because Perón was ousted by a military regime.
Peronism's influence continues to this day. The Kirchners, Nestor and Cristina, ushered in Peronism 2.0 in the 21st century. Kirchnerism, Milei's opposition movement, is a solidly left-wing flavor of Perón's iconic populist ideology. Throughout the many ups and downs of democracy and dictatorship, Argentina has defaulted on loans 9 times. Protectionist regulations kept Argentines from accessing the same products you and I order cheaply on Amazon. And previous leadership used a truly mind-blowing combination of aggressive spending, price controls, money printing, and currency manipulation. When Milei was elected, 41% of the country lived in poverty, and the annual inflation rate was over 200%. He was elected in a time of desperation. Nothing about Milei is expected. He took the traditional political playbook, lit it on fire, and said, "I'll do it my way," Frank Sinatra style. He swapped the suit for a leather jacket, kept his crazy hair, and occasionally wielded a chainsaw or guitar. Milei was that crazy guy on national television who would occasionally say something that made you clutch your pearls.
Zurdo de le podés dar ni un milímetro.
¿Me podés definir zurdo de mierda?
Porque son una
But young Argentines saw hope, forming the forces of heaven. The name was borrowed from a verse in Maccabees. Victory in war does not depend on the size of the fighting force, but rather upon the strength that comes from heaven. You can find my video on Milei's first year here, but briefly, Milei let go of 34,000 government workers and eliminated 10 out of 18 agencies. He lifted rent control, which led to a housing boom in Buenos Aires with declining rental prices. He launched the Ministry of Deregulation, which sounds like an oxymoron, but they do be deregulating, cutting 1 to 5 regulations a day.
Milei summoned an economist named Federico Sturzenegger, who had developed a plan to deregulate Argentina's economy. He had assembled a full team. Many of those deregulations got into an omnibus bill called Ley Bases that was passed in 2024, even at a time when Milei only controlled 15% of Congress. This was the best example of collaboration the Milei administration showed in 2024. Being in the minority, nobody really thought that Milei would be able to pull this effort.
Before Milei, Argentina ranked 146 out of 165 on the Fraser Institute's Economic Freedom Index for regulation, making it one of the most highly regulated economies in the world. But in Milei's first year, 672 regulatory reforms were announced. Milei also dismantled the Fair Prices program, which price capped 50,000 items, including food, personal hygiene products, and clothes. Previous president Alberto Fernandez claimed the price controls were, quote, aimed at reducing inflation and achieving price stability in order to restore the population's purchasing power. But inflation is not the fault of business owners, but of a central government printing money to keep up with its spending addiction.
How much stuff do you need to be happy?
I don't know. How much stuff is there?
Lars Andre Richter said this move was like trying to dam a raging river with a few pebbles. Milei's efforts have targeted the source of the problem, spending and money printing. In 2023, year-over-year inflation hit 211%. That's when Milei came in. 2 years later, it sits at 31.8% annually. But things have not been totally sunshine and roses for Milei. He's faced harsh criticism from the media for his economic austerity measures, as well as allegations against close allies, and protests from Kirchnerists in the Plaza de Mayo attracted a lot of attention from the press. So too has former President Cristina Kirchner herself, who's been on house arrest for corruption charges and occasionally makes appearances on her balcony to crowds of adoring fans. Rachel Zegler, you better watch out, girl.
I have taken these riches from the oligarchs!
And while poverty has remained an issue in Argentina, that too is falling. In early 2024, during Milei's first few months as president, poverty soared to 52.9%, but has since dropped to 31.6%. The biggest blow to confidence in Javier Milei's vision came after a primary election held in Buenos Aires showed support for Milei's opposition. In response, the peso's value plummeted and investors became a wee bit frightened. All of Milei's efforts have made Argentina a much more business-friendly climate, but the concern has always been that this is a passing phenomenon, like two strangers in the night, a fluke, and that investment in Argentina is not safe. In order for Milei's plans to work, he can't have a peronist, Kirchnerist legislature passing through humongous spending bills and overriding his veto with their majority, which is exactly what they've been doing. On October 26th, I was scrolling through X when I saw the news, victory for La Libertad Avanza. It seems the madmen have done it again, and did so using a much more secure ballot system than previous elections. La Libertad Avanza now has 19 seats in the Senate, and in the chamber, they gained 64 seats, putting them at 92 total, making them the largest voting bloc in the lower house. Most importantly, the Kirchnerist Peronist bloc no longer has the ability to override presidential vetoes or refuse to hear issues. While many thought these results were not possible in September, judging an election in Argentina based on a primary in Buenos Aires is like basing US presidential election predictions on what happens in California and New York. The sample is not representative of the whole, and I think some of these nuances are often lost in translation. But a lot rode on this election, and what happens next could determine how the world views libertarian governance for decades to come.
The Milei administration has announced 3 major reforms: labor reform, social security reform, and tax reform. Argentina has a very rigid labor market, and of course we need tax reform as well. If you were to pay all taxes that you are actually responsible for in Argentina, then you would have to pay 109% of your entire income Fortunately, we have a president who's willing to die before letting Argentina enter the deficit. But then Congress has been able to insist and override these vetoes. This is not likely to happen anymore, and this is certainly good news.
Ian Vasquez at the Cato Institute put it succinctly. Milei inherited a country suffering from more than 200% inflation in 2023, 40% poverty, a fiscal and quasi-fiscal deficit of 15% of GDP, a huge and growing public debt, a bankrupt central bank, and a shrinking economy. Guys, that's a lot to unravel in such a short amount of time. I think in spite of problems, setbacks, even potential failings, Milei has done a pretty outstanding job of taking it head on. And I, for one, am willing to give up $8 steaks as a tourist, because as the economy gets its life back, so do the people. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment below. To all of the Argentines watching, los quiero mucho. I will be back very soon, and I will see you all next week. Ciao!